بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متضلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائحي ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك عليه. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترته وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلته وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرته. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت لي بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نحوي بعد أملي وخضعت الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومطالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي. سوء عملي وفعالي، ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري، ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا، وعلي في جميع أمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك، أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي، أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء، فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدودك، وخالفت بعض أوامرك، فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك، وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا نتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري، وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري، وارحم شدة ضري، وفكني من شدي وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي، يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي. هبني لابتداء كرمك والسالف برك بي يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أطراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد من طوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيته، أو تبعد من أدنيته، أو تشرد من آويته، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمته. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدة، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك الصادقة وبشكرك مادحة، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى أوطان تعبدك الطائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنة. ما هكذا الظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مكثوه، يسير بقاؤه، قصير مدته. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين؟ يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها ضج وأبكي؟ لأليم العذاب وشدته، أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي، صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لا ضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين؟ يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته، وذاق طعم عذابك بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رباه؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك، ولا معروف من فضلك، ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحديك، وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك، لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك، أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأن تجل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا، وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها، وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها، وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته، وكل ذنب أذنبته، وكل قبيح أسررته، وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته، أخفيته أو أظهرته، وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني، وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيته، وبفضلك سترته، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته، أو إحسان فضلته، أو بر تنشره، أو رزق تبسطه، أو ذنب تغفره، أو خطأ تستره. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورة، وبخدمتك موصولة، وأعمالي عندك مقبولة، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي، يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قو على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك، والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك، وعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا صريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بي ما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا كثيرا. سورة مباركة الفاتحة.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليًا ولي الله. أشهد أن عليًا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله.
Surah Al-Mubarakat Al-Fatiha. There is a white BMW 530i. The picture is on the TV screen. The car needs to be moved, so if somebody can meet up a volunteer up front.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فتور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نأكل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاسبا فستعلمون كيف نذير ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبضن ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم إن أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور أفمن يمشي مكبا على وجهه أحدا أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم قل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الوعد إن كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب عليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, respected elders, brothers, sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all the names listed on the screen in Kul Arwahil Mu'mineen wal Mu'minat Sawab al-Fatiha. Ayatima Yajibun is requested for all the names listed on the screen and whoever is in need of it here and elsewhere. Let us all recite it together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su. Amma yujibul mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Now let us invite Sayyid to come forward to recite tonight's majlis par Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad salawat.
أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين رحمة للعالمين سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع نفوسنا وطبيب ذنوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وَلَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَىٰ أَعْدَائِهِمْ أَجْمَعِينَ مِنَ الْأَوَّلِينَ وَالْآخِرِينَ إِلَىٰ قِيَامِ يَوْمِ الدِّينِ أَمَّا بَعْدُ صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salaamun Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We'll start off first with, I believe there is one or two remaining, okay, maybe three remaining Slido questions. Then we'll move on to our topic for tonight, and then we'll end with a quiz. So Jabir asks, why is namaz ayat or salatul ayat wajib during a sun or moon eclipse? Oh yeah, and of course remember, try to join the quiz right away so we don't have to spend too much time later on. So why is it wajib during a sun or moon eclipse? And of course namaz ayat becomes wajib for other instances too, but specifically sun and moon eclipses. So there was an incident that took place during the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ala Farajah. So many of you may know, he had a few other children besides Sayyidah Fatima alayha salam as well, but they had died early on. So for example, one of his sons was Ibrahim. Ibrahim died when he was young. When Ibrahim had died, the Arabs had noticed that there was an eclipse. I believe it was a solar eclipse, if I'm not mistaken. So a solar eclipse had taken place. So as soon as this happened, and the Prophet was, in a stage of grief, of grieving, of aza. But the Muslims at that time were talking and discussing, and even some of the non-Muslims, and they said that this eclipse is because of the death of Ibrahim. The solar eclipse is due to the death of the son of the Prophet. In a sense, it's almost as if they wanted to say the son is mourning or something like that, right? Like there is this cause and effect relationship between the death of the son of Rasulullah and the solar eclipse. Immediately, when Rasulullah had heard this, he went to the minbar in the pulpit and he started addressing everybody. He said, Ayyuhan nas, people, inna shamsa wal qamar ayatan min ayatillah. So he had to correct this belief in their minds right away. He said, look, the sun and the moon are ayat, amongst the ayat of Allah. They're signs, they're indicators. لا ينكسفان لموت أحد ولا لحياته. The sun nor the moon will not eclipse because of somebody being born nor somebody dying. So don't ascribe these sort of random ideas and things that you have in your mind. And then he ends, فَإِذَا كَانَ كَذَلِكَ فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالصَّلَاةِ. And they said that this is when he said, when this happens, when these eclipses take place, it's wajib for us now to offer salah. So come to the masjid and pray. So there's a few points here. One of the main ones was the fact that this was a reaction to what the Arabs had been doing. And I think we can understand this too. In our various cultures, a lot of us, we have tried from where we've come in the East, we've tried to incorporate Islam as part of our culture, right? It's supposed to be the main nucleus and axis of our cultures. But let's be honest, that's not always the case. There are a lot of superstitions, false, fake beliefs, myths and legends, and all these ideas which come into people's minds, which sometimes gets misattributed to Islam. Even now, around the time of the eclipse, I got multiple questions from people regarding various issues about eclipses and about the meaning of eclipses and what you're allowed to do or not allowed to do, this and that. Some of them were Islamically based, some of them were not. So these sort of superstitions do exist in our cultures, and we have to be very, very careful. So because the Prophet saw that the Arabs were holding on to some of their incorrect superstitions and beliefs, he wanted to correct it right away and did not want to stand. And sometimes people say, maybe sometimes, we should allow a little bit of cultural room, right? Should be, it's okay, let people do certain things. When it affects the concept of tawheed, especially when it, something like this, when they're ascribing incorrect cause and effect, you see Allah orders Rasulullah right away to go and correct it. And specifically saying what? The second part of this, alaykum bis salah. You need to go pray to Allah. And this is where the ulama say, possibly, one of the strongest reasons behind salatul ayat, this prayer of ayat, eclipses and earthquakes and all these random events which shake us. Because somebody can ask, right, like, okay, for an earthquake or I don't know, a tornado or these natural disasters, people, they freak out. We can understand. Like, out of fear, we want to connect back to Allah. Most people could probably understand that. But a lot of people would say, look, we're not scared of eclipses. And we know that most of the fatwa from the Maraji, even if we're not scared of the eclipse, we're still supposed to offer Salatul Ayat, right, with its own conditions. Somebody might say, why is that the case? Well, it's because perhaps of this idea of sometimes we falsely attribute cause and effect to places where it doesn't belong. We start putting a religious tint on things which don't have that religious tint in them. And inshallah, a little bit later tonight, we'll talk a little bit more about this, because this topic is related to the concept of Mahdawiyya as well. Sometimes we see a certain thing, hear a certain thing, look out to global politics, and we say, aha, a sign of the Imam, it's around the corner. Is this correct or not? Should we have this belief or not? And inshallah, we'll talk about that. But even in our personal lives, a lot of times, we may have talked about this before, a certain event will take place. Maybe it's this big catastrophic event, like the pandemic. Maybe it's something small, right? Somebody we know might get into an accident or might get a certain illness, or somebody might get a job or something, good might happen in their life. And all of a sudden, we start to go and perform a tafsir of that right away. We see an alim or somebody do something, and we start to automatically perform our own tafsir. When we don't know what exactly was the reason, what was the niyyah, what was the cause, what was going on behind the scenes. Perhaps one of the things that we can take away from this Salatul Ayat is that, look, only with Allah lies this true cause and effect. Allah is the illat al-awwal, the only true cause there. If through Islamic sources we can figure out the reason for something, alhamdulillah, bismillah, do it. If we are going to jump in the middle of the process and start to say that this happened, that must mean that so-and-so community is cursed. Or this happened to my friend, that must mean he's blessed. We have to be very, very careful of making our own tafsir opinions about things that happen in life. And remember again, فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِالصَّلَاةِ. All these events which take place, we have to remember that it's Allah who is the one in charge of the khair for everybody's life. We don't know what is good and what is bad for everybody. We know that Allah is the one that's in charge, and we should remind ourselves of that, especially in the time of an eclipse, but in all other matters as well. Salawat Allah Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. What are some recommended actions to be done before going for ziyarah in Iraq? I think that'll take some time to answer, so I think I may have to leave that for next week. If you're going to be going before the program next Thursday, then you can mention that on Slido, and then maybe I'll leave your contact information. Maybe we'll just connect after that. Can you kindly translate the qunut dua you recited in Isha Salah? Sure. So somebody had asked this last week, can you translate the qunut? I had my guess about which one they talked about. But today on purpose I recited it in Isha so that they could mention it if they wanted to. So this dua, that's a famous one, which many of our ulama recite, which in fact, a lot of our ulama have been interviewed and questioned. And they've been asked, among all the different qunuts that can be recited, especially the ones in salah, right, in salawat, in the wajib prayers, they would ask various ulama, what is your favorite? What is the best one to recite? And the majority of them have answered this. Allahumma jal awaqaba umurina khaira. So, oh Ya Allah, make for us, Allahumma jal awaqib. So awaqib is the plural of aqib or aqiba. Aqiba means the end, the last, right? The end conclusion, end result. And then awaqaba umurina. Make the end of our umur, the end of our affairs, the end of our issues, our matters, everything, khaira. Make the end of our life khair. So why do the ulama say that this is one of their most favorite dua and most important dua to recite? So look, you and I can ask for iman right now. We can ask for nifaq to be removed from our hearts. We can ask for unity. We can ask for a lot of different things. But that can come and go. If we live another couple days, a couple weeks, couple months, years, a decade, how do we know we're going to last like that? So the ulama say, look, the most important thing is at that last moment, right before our soul transitions. So they say, Allah, right at that last moment, in our final moments, make that khair. Make sure that we are remembering you. We remember our kitab. We remember the Ahlul Bayt. We remember all of these things. And especially, we hope and pray that we are the ones that get to see and benefit from the presence of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam at that time of death too, when most of us may be frightened. So that is the translation and short tafsir of that dua as well. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And as I said, the other question, we will try to tackle that next week. So we'll have a quiz at the end. So whoever can, if you can, please just join now so that we can take less time right after the main discussion. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Back to our topic of Mahdawiyah. Last week, we asked the question, why is the Imam's reappearance delayed? Why is there this delay? We went through some typical arguments and answers and responses that you and I might give, then objections that people might raise to us, and then we responded back to them. In summation, we said that, look, we know that humans have always been in need of guidance. Not just now, but from the beginning, from the time of Nabi Adam alayhi salam and Bibi Hawa alayhi salam. Humans have always been in need of divine guidance. But because they were not ready for it, they could not handle it, there had to have been this training system set up so that they could grow. So when somebody may question and say, why is there a gap? Why a ghaybatul sughra and then a ghaybatul kubra? And then later on a reappearance in dhuhur. Why not just have it right away? Why not just have the 12th Imam right after the 11th and lead the movement? We say, look, there have always been gaps between many of the prophets. So if the idea is that we've always needed guidance, which is true, then Allah shouldn't have made gaps. But maybe because of the specific needs and the specific growth that every single ummah and community had to go through before they were gifted a Nabi or Rasul, they had to wait for that. And the same thing for us as well, which is something that we'll have to be talking about soon, inshallah, is what are we doing or what is our role in sort of causing that delay of the Imam? The second thing we talked about as well was that we have to remember that if the Imam needs perfect individuals, he's supposed to manifest perfection on this earth, a perfect civilization for everybody. We have to know that that doesn't manifest in a vacuum. It doesn't happen randomly. We have to build and work towards that. So we have to understand too that this is something we didn't really open up, but part of the dunya, this physical material world, is about change, about movement, taharruk and haraka. Things don't just instantaneously happen. They have to go through growth or loss, deficiency, degeneration. It goes back and forth like that. And sometimes it can get worse before it gets better. Sometimes it gets better and then it drops. It goes different ways. So the idea is, in order for humans to be ready for the Imam, then there's some growth that Allah is waiting for us to do, because He's not going to force us. It's up to us using our free will. When we do it, then inshallah, Allah knows exactly when is the best point, the only point when the Imam will be allowed to return. Now, what's the sort of next questions that might come to our mind? Okay, if that's the question, then when is he going to come? Is there a sort of time frame that we can have in mind? We've heard sometimes speakers, ulama, people talking about, this certain time frame or this era or this period in human civilization, that's when the Imam's going to come. And then follow-up question is, okay, once we figure out when, then we can talk about how he's going to lead as well. If we can figure out some of the details about what his methodology will be when he comes, inshallah, then that'll give us more information about how we can prepare ourselves before he arrives, and then what we're supposed to do when he does arrive, inshallah. Ajjalallahu ta'ala faraju sharif, salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. First question is this: what are the specific actions the Imam of the time will take? What is going to be his method? What system will he be using? Here's the short answer. We don't know, and beyond that, we can't know. We'll never know. You say, how's that the case? People have been talking about it a lot. You see, the reason we can't know, we don't know, and we will never know all the specific details about the Imam's coming and the details about what he'll do when he gets here, the details I'm talking about specifically, is because there's way too many unknowns. There's too many variables that we cannot ever account for. So let me give you some examples. The first is when people talk about this idea of an exact time, an exact era, an environment. There is no way for us to know this. We have no idea. Now, I know that there are speakers who are saying things like, okay, because of X, Y, Z variables, the dhuhur of the Imam, the coming of the Imam is right around the corner. Look at what's happening in this country. Look what's happened in this country. This country's done this. This leader is over here. And they start attributing all of these specific things, right? Remember how we talked about in terms of eclipses. Sometimes we get in the habit of falsely attributing things to Islam. This especially happens when it comes to the signs of the coming of the Imam, the dhuhur, or right before the dhuhur. And it's not just sometimes people like you and I who might misattribute ideas. Sometimes even speakers, pseudo-scholars I'll say as well, they may sometimes go beyond what they should be saying. They go outside of their jurisdiction. When it should be fairly obvious that within our riwayat, we are told very specifically that nobody will ever know this. Why is it that speakers are going around saying, get ready, it's right around the corner? How can they say that? It can be 1,000 years down the line. It can be tomorrow. It can be 100,000 years later. We have absolutely no clue. Look at this narration, for example, which is attributed to our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Muhammad. And pay attention as I go. He uses very, very strong words here. So somebody comes to him and asks him, or tells him, إخبرني عن هذا الأمر. So tell me about this issue. الذي ننتظر متى هو. He's like, this issue, this amr that we're waiting for, when's it going to happen? See, even the Shi'as at that time, they were waiting, right? During the sixth Imam's time. What's interesting too, if we had time, we would explain this. He says, tell me about هذا الأمر. He doesn't speak in very clear terms. So this probably means that this was a sensitive issue and they had to be careful. Sometimes people talk about taqiyya and things like that. You see, a smart, wise individual doesn't always just say everything that's on their mind. They don't always just go out and give all the information, right? I know sometimes people talk about, the truth needs to be spoken all the time, everywhere, everybody needs to be informed. No, I don't think that's the case. It doesn't seem like that's the case with the imams themselves and their companions and followers. They knew that sometimes it's better that we speak in code, speak in secret, because there are other individuals who might twist our words, who might play with our words. We have enemies who are willing to cause fitna. So we have to be very, very careful with the words that we choose. Anyway, he says, this thing that we're waiting for, the amr, the issue, when's it going to happen? فقال, Imam replies, Ya mihzam. So this is the companion, mihzam. كذب الوقاتون. Waqatun, the people, literally the people of waqt, meaning the ones who are trying to determine a specific time. كذب, they've lied. وهلك المستعجلون. The musta'jilun, the people who are talking about it coming very soon, we're saying, it's going to happen around the corner. They are halak, halak, they're destroyed. They're completely finished. Again, remind you of certain types of speakers too, right? Who just talk about, it's happening really, really soon, let's get ready. And then he ends by saying, وَنَجَا الْمُسْلِمُونَ. The ones who have gotten and reached najat are the Muslimun. In this sense, meaning the ones who have completely submitted to the idea. When the Mufassirin talk about this hadith, they say, look, over here, possibly, the idea of submitting is this, is that if the Imam comes in 5 minutes, I'm going to be ready. If he comes tomorrow, I'll be ready. Next Friday, I'll be ready. If he comes 100 years later, I'll still be ready. Because I've built up my iman, I've worked on my spirituality enough that even if I was in my grave, I would be the type of Shia that would be raised from the grave to be a part of the Imam's army. And we have this in other narrations as well. That you don't have to be alive to be a part of the Imam's supporting team. You don't have to be alive. But it's about whether you've built up that spiritual connection to him in this life, if you've worked and made that spiritual momentum or not. If you haven't, then the Imam has no use for you whether you're alive or dead. It doesn't matter. But if we've worked on ourselves, if we are Muslimun, those who submit and say, look, it's not going to change a thing for me if the Imam comes tomorrow because I'm ready right now. If he comes 100 years later, I'll still be ready. So that doesn't matter because I've submitted to whatever time it is, whatever place it is. It doesn't matter what era. It doesn't matter what signs come. I will be ready because I'm ready to devote my life and give my life for the cause of Islam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So over here, again, the Imam is saying, be careful. And these people who are talking about timing, specific timings, they're liars. And the ones who are saying, it's right around the corner, these people have been destroyed, right? They've ruined themselves. So we have to be very, very careful. Now somebody might respond and say, Hasan, I know that we can't give, specifics about time, but maybe we can talk about his methods, at the very least, because we know about technological progress. And I hear this a lot from, again, not just, lay individuals, but from what people think are credible speakers and pseudo-scholars. They say, okay, we need to improve our understanding of artificial intelligence and social media and all this stuff, because that's, of course, what the imam's going to use when he returns. Because that's the language, that's the medium that everybody's using right now. And we know, of course, that when the imam returns, inshallah, then he needs a quick medium to get a hold of everybody, right? And if you were to ask anybody right now, what would be the fastest way for the imam to get his message out? Everybody would say the same thing, social media, right? It's like, Clubhouse, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. Although if you ask people who are a bit older, they'd say, we have WhatsApp groups where, some of these WhatsApp groups, the video clips and little forwards and stuff that get shared, I swear that these things get shared around faster than Corona got spread. Like, these must watch this. This is the greatest clip ever, the best this and that. People love to exaggerate this stuff. So they say, look, this social media systems, the media system is there. The imam could reach every single Shia like this. So obviously he's going to use something like that, won't he? Well, that's my question to you. Do you really think that that's what's going to happen? Are you really that sure? You might think that that's how society's progressing, that's technology, and that's it, we can't escape it. Well, maybe that would be the case if he came right at this moment and nothing in terms of society, politics, technology changed at all. Maybe that would be the case. But we might respond and say, look, how do we know that this is actually going to be the situation in our society at that time? And I would respond to speakers and pseudo-scholars or even some ulama who might say this idea of you're really focusing on the internet. And unfortunately, this idea I've heard unfortunately from a lot of speakers, motivational or even some ulama. I think sometimes they may be using this idea of pushing social media and the internet and social media as an excuse because they get very, very active. And sometimes, it's tough. Social media draws our nafs. It draws our ego. You want likes, you want subscribes, you want people to retweet, share. You want the focus back on yourself. That's the nature of social media. You want to be viral, you want to be shared. And it's a very deadly disease, especially for an alim to have. For somebody who's like, I'm just doing the work of Allah. Let Allah do that, right? وَرَفَعْنَا لَهُ ذِكْرًا. Allah is the one who can raise the remembrance of Rasulullah. Why do you need to now go and start exaggerating everything? This sort of false celebrity status that gets out there. So unfortunately, I've seen this from many speakers try to make this excuse why they love social media so much. It's because maybe, again, not judging intention, maybe they themselves, their nafs, their egos attached to social media, so now they have to convince everybody that this is the way that Islam has to progress forward. So, and again, I would respond to him like this. I said, look, I think most of us have seen enough Hollywood movies to know that it's very, very clear that social media can go away and be destroyed just like that. It can become completely useless. Even right now, if you look at the situation, how do we know that these companies that exist, the ones that I just mentioned, wouldn't immediately censor what the imam had to say? I mean, they're censoring plenty of other people right now. There's no freedom out there. They can censor any single person they want. What's going to stop these individuals? And we know who are the organizations and governments who are supplying the money for these things. We know that. We know their agendas. What's to say that when they find out that, the Mahdi, the Qa'im, the leader of the Shias, the leader of humanity is there, he's putting out these ideas, they'll cut it out right away on any of these platforms, except for maybe Signal, but that's debatable, I guess, right? So they can stop that. Or let's say, even if that's not the case, again, for those of you who watch enough apocalyptic movies, what would happen if, as we're getting there, a lot of countries or governments, they start using EMP devices, right? Devices that block out electrical signals and completely render them null and void. What are we going to do then, right? You're going to sit there waiting for the notification to come from the imam if your phone is knocked out, your TV is knocked out, radio, everything's knocked out. So if we, just think that this is definitely how the imam is going to work and that's it, and we don't look for other ways and improve other alternatives, we may be stuck in a place where we have no way to communicate with the imam. So the point here was that we have to be very, very careful of making specific notions and ideas that the imam will definitely do this and definitely do that. Any of these things can go away at any point. And again, all of this was about with the assumption that the imam's coming right now. All of this technology can go away in any second. And of course, the ones who are in power, especially the ones who don't want the imam to return, they can easily cut out these resources and sources for the imam to utilize. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In terms of, this was just the idea of media. We can talk about politics, we can talk about economics and finances, we can talk about it in every single sphere. That there's going to be so many different variables that we can't do it. Our imagination doesn't know what's going to happen in 10, 15, 20 years. Nobody imagined this pandemic. All the different, let's say, I don't want to call, I guess you can call it advancements in social media and in artificial intelligence, in technology right now. Most of us didn't know these things. Maybe a few did, but not everybody planned these things. Even our imagination cannot know what sort of technology will show up when the Imam is there. So let's be very, very careful about what specific details we are mentioning that the Imam is going to do this and going to do this. General points, maybe we can talk about that. And inshallah, we'll talk more about the general signs and ideas. We'll talk more about that inshallah next week. So the major question that we're going to start with also next week is, what exactly will humanity be like then? Are there some general points and signs? Some we maybe have heard before, some maybe we haven't. We have to clarify and recognize that there are some signs which are, quote unquote, more authentic and reliable, and there are some which, I don't want to say are false, but may lack in their value of authenticity. Our important point is to understand, what will humanity be like? What will human civilization be like when the Imam is about to reappear? And how can we use that information to make sure that you and I are not caught up in those issues and caught up in those problems? How do we make sure that you and I are, as everybody loves to say, how do we know we are ready and awaiting and doing intidhar of the faraj of the Imam? Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So that will be our discussion for next Thursday, inshallah ta'ala. So we can move on to the Slido quiz. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Okay, subscribe to Quarantine Classics. I don't know what that means. Is that a YouTube channel? Is that a Twitter account? Clubhouse? I don't know what it is, so you have to be more specific. So, Assalamu alaikum to Bande Khuda 2, Labayk Ya Mahdi, Sayyid Hussein, Yarhamukumullah. Communication Parpia, Muhammad, Sabah, Hadi, Specialists, Jaber Z, Yusuf Ali, Rais, Wikala, Muzammil Jan Muhammad, who did I miss? Keep shifting. The Dewgies, Z, Double S, Kristaps. I think, Aristotle, as usual. Okay, I think I got everybody right. RMJ, SY or Psy. Okay, yeah, I think we can get started, right? Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good luck to everybody. Zara, I'm ready. Qamba. Okay. Shawaal comes from the verb shal, which means to rise, lift, carry, to recover, to return, to wear a scarf, or none of the above. So I added the word verb here after somebody sent me some information last week because I made a mistake. And after you answer this question, then I'll mention what the mistake was. So again, I'm saying Shawaal comes from the verb shal, which means what? Hasan. So 76% of you remembered from last week, it means to rise, lift, or carry. So the reason I had to make this correction is because one of the options last week was shal. And I thought that it was only something in Urdu and Farsi and other languages. But somebody told me, said shal is actually the word for scarf in Arabic as well, and certain communities use it too. So I made that mistake, so thank you for correcting me. But the verb does not mean to wear a scarf. Well, unless you find that, I looked it up, I didn't see it there. So that's why it's not the case. Okay, let's go to the second one. The 25th of Shawaal, which would be Saturday night and Sunday, marks what? The destruction of Al-Baqi, the birth of Imam Baqir alayhi salam, the death of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, the day samosas were invented. I'm sure with some of you, all of these are very, very important events in your life. 87%. So 87% of you. Remember that we will have our, inshallah, majlis on Saturday night if Allah gives us the tawfiq to commemorate the shahada of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Okay, 2 more questions. In order to prepare for Imam Mahdi, Ajjallahu ta'ala faraju sharif, his reappearance, we must what? Improve our akhlaq and morality, implement the concept of wilaya within our homes, develop concrete solutions to political, economic, and social issues, or all of the above. I always feel so bad for the people who are not on Slido who are just sitting here looking at me. Yeah, it's supposed to be an easy one, right? I think. So yes, all of the above. They're all important, and this is something that we're going to explain a bit more next week, inshallah. Okay, final question. What is the official name of the star located closest to the North Celestial Pole? Eridanus, Iota Cephei, Gamma Cephei, or Polaris? Eridanus, actually, yeah. Sorry. Or Eridanus, maybe. %79% of you got it right. It is Polaris. And let's see who took first place this week. Aristotle, once again, oh, well, 5 of you were tied, but Aristotle got it because of being the fastest, so congratulations. Great job also to Muhammad, Labayk Ya Mahdi specialist, and Z. Inshallah ta'ala, just a reminder for the rest of the programs for this week. Tomorrow night we'll be having the Sisters Only program, where the concept will be about hijab, about some of the wisdom and some of the issues surrounding that. So remember, it's a Sisters Only program, and we'll be starting with Maghrib. Again, this is Sisters Only, so men do not come from Maghrib Jamaat prayers. So the program, now there is a change there, so it'll take place with everything, the salah, and then the program will take place in this main hall over here. On Saturday night, we have our majlis, of course, and then after that, we will see you all on these programs, and then next Thursday, if Allah provides us the tawfiq and gives us life. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Ahl Bayt Tayyibin Tahirin. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا نبي الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح نبي الله. السلام عليك يا وارث إبراهيم خليل الله. السلام عليك يا وارث موسى كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور. أشهد أنك قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دعائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والأروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبإيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي، وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المدلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلت ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أسفياء الله وأوداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصح. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. بأبي أنتم وأمي تبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأحوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمتان قتلت ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة استخلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المهام الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. وألحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا أئمة المسلمين علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن يا صاحب الزمان. سيدي الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا مدهر الإيمان، يا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله فرجك وسخر الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.